media storm that we are feeling.
With Madeleine
McCann.
Madeleine McCann from a Madeleine McCann.
Madeleine McCann.
But Madeleine McCann is a
Madeleine McCann.
The most famous disappearance case in the world and the most mysterious of the 21st century. Madeleine McCann, a British girl, barely 3 years old, suddenly vanished from her bed while sleeping next to her siblings inside an apartment at a tourist resort in Portugal. No screams, no trace, and not even a single camera captured what happened. This incident transformed from a small local news story into a global mystery that captivated newspapers and television channels for many long years. Massive investigations were launched, involving police and international intelligence agencies. Thousands of testimonies and reports were collected, and repeated appeals came from the family and the media. Despite all this, no conclusive evidence ever emerged that could lead to Madeleine. According to the British government, the cost of the investigation alone surpassed £10 million sterling, yet the enigma remained completely unanswered. And now, after more than 19 long years of profound silence and deep mystery, the perplexing riddle that had truly baffled the entire world has at last been solved. In this video, you are about to uncover exclusive secrets and facts that are being revealed for the very first time. There is no worse news in the entire world that a human being could ever hear than the news of their parents passing or the devastating moment they discover that one of their beloved children has suddenly disappeared. And even worse than that is the agonizing uncertainty of not knowing where they went, how they vanished, or with whom they might be, and the terrifying thought of whether you will ever see them again or if they are gone forever. And in May of 2007, this chilling news transformed into a horrifying reality for an English family who were spending their holiday in Portugal. Their little girl, who was not even 3 years old, disappeared from her bed in the very same room where her twin brother was soundly sleeping. She vanished without a sound, without witnesses, and without a trace to explain what happened to her. Every year, as spring and summer arrive, many families love to travel around the world to change their environment and get away from the pressures of daily life. The McCann family was one of those families. An English family of 5, a father, a mother, and 3 children. Jerry McCann was born in 1968. He studied medicine and graduated from the University of Glasgow in 1992. Just 1 year after his graduation, he met his future wife, Kate McCann, who was a newly qualified obstetrician and gynecologist. She was also born in 1968. They shared the same ambition, and each encouraged the other to succeed in their chosen paths. Later, Jerry specialized in heart surgery, while Kate pursued a career as a general practitioner. In 1998, they were married in the English city of Leicester. Like any young couple starting their lives together, their greatest dream was to establish a family and settle down. But at first, it wasn't easy. They faced difficulties conceiving, and their attempts lasted over 5 years until the moment that finally changed their lives. They were blessed with their first daughter, whom they named Madeleine. She was a beautiful blonde child with blue eyes, full of vitality and fun, who loved to laugh and play. And for her parents, she was not just a child, but a true miracle, as if she were a divine compensation from God for their many long years of patient waiting. After Madeleine turned 2, Kate became pregnant once more, but this time the surprise was even greater, as she was expecting twins, a boy and a girl. In 2005, their 2 children arrived. A boy they named Sean, and a girl they named Emily. From that very moment, Jerry and Kate felt their greatest dream had at last come true, for they now had the family they had always longed for. 3 children would fill their home with so much life and laughter. After the twins completed their first year, the family decided to take a break from their daily routine. So, with a group of friends, they planned a 2-week trip out of the country, where they'd have a great time and give their children a chance to enjoy the vacation. On the 28th day of April in the year 2007, the family embarked on a trip to a quaint small coastal village in Portugal which was called Praia da Luz. They rented an apartment at a tourist resort called Ocean Club Resort. The apartment was on the ground floor with 2 rooms, one for the parents and one for the children. It overlooked a backyard garden with a small pool, enclosed by a low fence. As for the resort itself, it was widely known as a quiet, safe and family-friendly place for children, enjoying immense popularity among English families who chose it for their holidays. During their initial days at the resort, the family was truly enjoying moments filled with happiness and comfort, especially Madeleine, who received particular attention due to her upcoming 4th birthday, which was only a few days away, and everyone was eagerly preparing for the celebration. Their days unfolded in a simple yet delightful routine. In the mornings, they would spend their time swimming, playing, and enjoying themselves. But in the evenings, the children would go to bed early so that they could wake up the following day completely refreshed and full of energy. As for the adults, they had their own special routine. After the children were asleep, they would gather at a restaurant near the apartment called Tapas Restaurant, where they would sit down for dinner. And about every 30 minutes or so, one of them would make their way back to the house just to check in on the children and ensure they were sleeping peacefully and well. Then they would come back out again to continue enjoying the evening with all the other friends. This routine would repeat almost every single night, typically starting around 8:30 in the evening and continuing until 11 o'clock or even past midnight. As this exact scene played out day after day, the resort's employees became quite familiar with this particular group, so much so that they eventually started calling them the Tapas Group. 5 days after arriving at the resort, specifically on Thursday, May 3rd, the day began quite normally. In the morning, the family had breakfast. Then the children went down to play in the swimming pool and spent a fun-filled time until about 2:30 in the afternoon. Following this, the children proceeded to the kids' club located within the resort, while Jerry headed off to enjoy a game of tennis with his companions. This arrangement continued until approximately 6 o'clock in the evening. Subsequently, Kate made her way back to the apartment, accompanied by the children. And by around 7:30 in the evening, the children had already settled down for the night and fallen fast asleep. The twins, Sean and Emily, were soundly sleeping in a single bed, placed right beside the bedroom door, while Madeleine was resting peacefully in her own small bed, which was located just below the window. Before she left the room, Kate carefully checked to ensure the window and curtains were securely closed. Meanwhile, Jerry had also returned home, and he began to get ready with his wife for their customary evening out with friends. Before they left the apartment, they made certain all the doors were securely closed. However, they intentionally left the children's bedroom door slightly ajar. The reason for this was so that if one of the children happened to wake up during the night, they could easily step out. And simultaneously, when they returned to check on them periodically, they wouldn't have to open the door each time, creating a sound that might disturb the children from their peaceful sleep. By 8 o'clock that evening, everyone had taken their seats at their usual table in the Tapas Restaurant, which was located inside the Ocean Club Resort. Then, at approximately 8:30 p.m., Jerry returned to the apartment to check on the children. Upon entering, he discovered the 3 children sleeping soundly, but he couldn't help but notice that the room's door stood completely open, despite knowing that all the windows were securely closed and there was absolutely no breeze that could have possibly pushed the door open in such a way. Nevertheless, he didn't suspect anything at all. He assumed that Madeleine had probably woken up from her sleep and gone to the bathroom, and that it was she who had left the door ajar in this manner. Therefore, he gently closed the door back into its proper position, and then he went back to the restaurant to finish the evening with his friends. At 9 o'clock, one of their friends, a woman named Jane Tanner, along with Matthew Oldfield, got up and went to check on their own children as well. At that moment, Kate got ready to go with them and check on her children. But Matthew told her to stay here. He informed her he would stop by their apartment on his way to personally check on Madeleine and her siblings, then come back to them. And indeed, he passed by the room, took a quick look inside, and saw the children in their beds, sleeping peacefully. After that, he went to check on his daughter, and then he returned to the restaurant once more. He remained with them for approximately another 30 minutes, and then, at precisely 10 o'clock in the evening, Kate made the decision to go personally to check on the children. Upon her entry into the apartment, she immediately observed that the door to the children's room stood completely open. She thought Matthew was the one who had left it open when he came to check on them a little while ago. She quietly approached and took a quick peek inside the room, without turning on the light so as not to wake the children. But as she went to close the door, it slammed shut forcefully from the strong draft that came in through the window. At that moment, a deep worry began to creep into her heart. She was absolutely certain she had closed the window with her own hands before leaving the apartment. She wondered to herself, who could have opened the window? And why? She walked closer to Madeleine's bed to shut the window, only to be shocked that Madeleine was not there. Kate rushed quickly from the room. Her heart was pounding violently as she called out loudly, "Madeleine! Madeleine!" She was full of hope that the little girl had simply woken up and gone to the bathroom, or perhaps to another room in the apartment, but she meticulously searched every single corner, and to her dismay, found absolutely no trace of her. She then quickly ran out to the backyard, thinking maybe she had gone to the nearby swimming pool, but there was no one there. At that very moment, she realized the situation was far more serious than she could have ever imagined. She ran with all her might and strength towards the restaurant where her husband was sitting with his friends, desperately needing their help, and in just a few short seconds, the restaurant's quiet, peaceful atmosphere quickly turned into a state of sheer panic after everyone present heard her frantic screams as she cried out in a complete emotional breakdown, "Madeleine, my precious daughter has disappeared." Kate's words turned the restaurant's atmosphere completely upside down. Everyone jumped from their seats and the friends immediately rushed to the apartment to find out what was happening. Upon their arrival, they immediately started searching every conceivable spot, beneath the beds, behind the drapes, within the wardrobes, even deep inside the tiny kitchen cabinets. They desperately hoped she might have simply hidden herself somewhere, playing a game, as young children often do. However, there was absolutely no sign of her. Matthew asked Kate to remain inside the apartment, just in case Madeleine might suddenly reappear at any moment, while he himself rushed to the resort's reception desk, urgently seeking their assistance. In the meantime, everyone else ventured out into the nearby streets, questioning anyone they encountered and calling Madeleine's name throughout the area. Perhaps the little girl woke up and couldn't find her parents, so she became frightened and went out to look for them. However, they knew that this possibility was very slim, because Madeleine never usually moved without her favorite doll. Yet, the doll was still lying on the bed. And what's more, all her shoes were also in their proper place. This meant that the little girl had somehow left the apartment without her beloved doll, and, even more alarmingly, she was completely barefoot. And in this terrifying moment, filled with such profound fear, they truly had no other option but to continue their desperate search. Just a few short minutes later, all of the resort's staff immediately joined the search efforts, and the entire surrounding area was quickly transformed into a full-blown state of emergency. And in less than an hour, approximately 60 volunteers from the village residents were actively searching for Madeleine in every possible location. At the very same time, the Portuguese police force made their way to the resort, but their peculiar actions immediately raised a multitude of questions and a sense of deep mystery. Instead of closing off the apartment and designating it a crime scene to properly preserve the evidence, they simply left the location wide open, with individuals continuously moving in and out. Some individuals were entering to offer solace to Kate, while others endeavored to provide assistance by meticulously checking the apartment and thoroughly searching its various surroundings. However, no one thought to collect any fingerprints, or to properly photograph the entire scene, or even to meticulously record the names of all the individuals who had entered and subsequently exited the apartment during the critical first hour of the girl's disappearance. Many believed that one of the reasons for this was that the local police force did not possess adequate experience in dealing with cases of child abduction. For this very reason, the family quickly decided to turn to the British Embassy in Portugal, requesting their full support and assistance in handling the matter. With the breaking of dawn, all of London had already received the news, and the swift spread of this information placed the Portuguese government under significant pressure. At first, the police department was handling the report as simply a missing persons case, assuming the young girl would eventually return by herself, which occasionally occurs in these kinds of situations. They were contemplating waiting for a full 24 hours to pass before they would consider escalating the investigation. However, after the massive media outcry, the situation drastically altered and the authorities started to approach the investigation with considerably more seriousness. At approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, the police sent in 4 specialized search and rescue dogs to meticulously examine the crime scene. They initiated their search in the waterways, wells, caves, and all conceivable locations surrounding the village of Praia da Luz. Meanwhile, investigators were conducting intensive interrogations with the family and with all the people who had interacted with them since their arrival at the resort. And naturally, the very first person to draw suspicion was their friend Matthew, because he was the sole individual who volunteered to personally go and check on the children just a short while before Madeleine vanished, and he was the only one who both entered and exited the apartment during that specific time frame. For this very reason, the investigators began to suspect that he might have been involved in an agreement with someone else to kidnap the young girl. All eyes quickly turned to another individual following Tanner's compelling testimony, in which she stated that while she was making her way back to the restaurant with Matthew, she had observed a man in the vicinity of the McCann family's residence. His skin was white, his hair was dark, and he stood approximately 1 meter 70 centimeters tall. He was wearing light-colored trousers and a dark shirt, and he was carrying a young child in his arms. The clothing that the little girl was wearing closely matched the description that Madeleine's family had provided: a pink, patterned pajama set, and her feet were bare. This individual was observed making his way with the young girl towards the dwelling of one of the resort's guests, a man identified as Robert Murat. Robert, a young man of British-Portuguese descent, is 33 years of age, and he currently resides in his mother's home, situated approximately 150 meters away from the precise location where she witnessed the individual carrying the young child. What further increased the police's suspicions towards him was that 3 neighbors had testified shortly before the incident that they had seen him standing with 3 of his friends next to the house, talking amongst themselves and looking around suspiciously, as if they were planning something sinister. After that, Robert returned to his own home while his friends approached the McCann family's house. Police speculations began to suggest he might have conspired with others to kidnap the child and bring her to him. And then perhaps they killed her or sold her to someone abroad. Due to these suspicions, the police detained Robert and began meticulously searching his home, phone, and computer. But following an extensive investigation, they could not find any evidence whatsoever to prove his involvement or connection to the case. And since there was absolutely nothing to establish his guilt, the police had no choice but to release him, though they kept him and his 3 friends under close surveillance as a necessary precautionary measure. But the lack of concrete evidence did not stop the fierce attacks against him from those sympathetic to the McCann family. Many of them were absolutely convinced that Robert and his associates were indeed responsible for the child's disappearance, which prompted some to send him and his family threatening messages, aiming to force him to confess the child's location. In the span of just one single night, Robert Murat's entire life was utterly transformed into a true living hell, all due to a heinous crime with which he had no involvement or connection whatsoever. At the very same time that the investigation was ongoing with Robert, the McCann family was directing severe accusations against the Portuguese government for its negligence and dereliction of duty. Despite the significant likelihood that the little girl had been abducted and transported out of the country, the police, in those crucial initial hours, did not even consider implementing the most basic precautionary measures. They did not even conduct searches in the houses adjacent to the crime scene. Furthermore, neither border police, the Navy, nor any road monitoring agencies were alerted to prevent the child's departure from Portugal. This oversight meant they could not have possibly thwarted any attempt to smuggle her out of the country. And the most disturbing thing is that the roadblocks were not established until 10:30 in the morning, which was more than 12 crucial hours after the little girl had gone missing, a period that was more than enough for her abductor to have already left Portugal and potentially reached anywhere else in the entire world. And when they decided to set up checkpoints, the officers were merely sitting inside their vehicles, not bothering to stop any passing cars, and they didn't even bother to request the surveillance camera footage from the main highways, which could have potentially revealed any vehicle that had departed from the village of Praia da Luz on the very night of the disappearance. This egregious failure in the initial response increased the difficulty of the investigation and gave the perpetrators a full opportunity to escape without leaving any trace. Because of this grave oversight, an urgent and decisive response came from the British government, which decided to participate directly in the investigation and opened a new file named Operation Grand, allocating a huge budget to support the search and investigation efforts. Immediately, British forensic police began lifting fingerprints and meticulously analyzing evidence at the crime scene. This allowed them to successfully extract Madeleine's DNA, and they also found a strange person's fingerprint inside the room. But unfortunately, the investigation soon encountered a significant obstacle, as they discovered that more than 20 individuals had entered the room after the child's disappearance. And suddenly, the British government found itself facing an impenetrable wall of mystery, just as the Portuguese government did. They have no idea who took the child, nor what exactly happened to her, nor if she is still alive or not. Everything became quite hazy, and no one seemed to possess a truly clear answer. The story of Madeleine McCann transformed in just a few short days into a massive global media phenomenon. Reporters from all corners of the globe descended upon the small village of Praia da Luz, conducting numerous interviews and conversations with Kate and Jerry. What was truly surprising was how the couple steadfastly maintained a calm and neutral demeanor during every single media appearance, to the point where Kate appeared extremely reserved and completely tearless in some of her interviews, as if everything that had transpired was somehow anticipated. On the 15th of May, a full 12 days after the young girl's disappearance, they established a special support fund, which they then named Madeleine's Fund, with the goal of collecting donations to aid in the effort to solve this perplexing mystery. Consequently, due to the immense global fame they had achieved, donations began to pour in from every corner of the world, ultimately reaching millions of pounds sterling. They then utilized these substantial funds to launch a massive and widespread publicity campaign. As a result, Madeleine's photographs were extensively disseminated across every part of the globe, with the fervent hope that someone might have seen her, especially if she had been abducted and transported to a different nation. They also established a dedicated website to receive any information regarding the case around the clock and distributed posters in airports and seaports across all of Europe. And prominent figures and international celebrities began to participate in supporting the cause, which significantly increased the media attention and public interest, and contributed to keeping Madeleine's case continuously present in the minds of people worldwide. Among these celebrities, David Beckham, the former England star, appeared in a video appealing for public help and support in the search for Madeleine, openly displaying her picture. The campaign was not limited to the media. Private investigators from Germany, Spain, and Portugal were hired in addition to criminal psychology experts to study all aspects of the case. Due to the enormous media uproar, thousands of reports began pouring in from all over the world, from people claiming they had seen a little girl matching Madeleine's description. Reports arrived from Spain, Mexico, Norway, and England, and even from Arab countries like Morocco, where witnesses there reported seeing a woman carrying on her back a child who looked exactly like Madeleine. When investigators traveled to Morocco, it was revealed that it was merely a case of mistaken identity, nothing more. This brought the total number of reports filed with the British government to over 8,000. However, regrettably, the vast majority of these reports were either completely false or simply involved common instances of mistaken identity and ultimately failed to yield any substantial breakthroughs in the investigation. And in any case around the world, when it reaches this level of fame and public interest, the public outcry is supposed to be a source of support for the victims' loved ones and grant them the feeling that they are not alone, and that there are many people who sympathize with them. But in Madeleine's case, the outcome was entirely the opposite. All the media and public attention and commotion did not bring the family comfort or peace of mind, but instead it only added to their pressure and tension. On June 2nd, 2007, Kate and Jerry appeared for a television interview with a German newspaper, and during that interview they were asked a truly shocking and very direct question. Are you yourselves involved in the disappearance of the little girl? Or not? At that moment, Kate showed clear confusion, looking at her husband and letting him answer, denying any involvement in the case. From then on, public and press attention shifted to a completely different theory, far from kidnapping. That Kate and Jerry were behind their daughter's disappearance. Theories emerged, suggesting that since they were both doctors, perhaps they were giving the child sedatives or sleeping medication to keep her asleep during specific hours while they went out to socialize with their friends, an action that tragically might have led to an unforeseen accident. Then the accusations escalated more seriously, with other theories claiming the child might have died due to negligence, and her parents tried to dispose of the body, then fabricated a kidnapping story to cover it up. Despite the rather unusual and perplexing nature of these theories, they undeniably sparked widespread and intense public debate, especially after the Portuguese investigator Gonçalo Amaral released a comprehensive article and an extensive book titled The Truth of the Lie, in which he meticulously analyzed the body language of Kate and Jerry during their various press conferences, and specifically highlighted the numerous contradictions in their public statements concerning the precise details of the night of the disappearance. At certain times, he stated they would enter the apartment to ensure the children were safe using the back door. Then, on another occasion, he claimed they had entered through the front door. At one point, he mentioned that the window could only be operated from inside the room itself. Yet another time, he asserted that someone had opened it from the outside. The journalist's firm opinion was that, regardless of how the specific details might have differed, there was undeniably clear and evident neglect. How could 3 young children, the eldest of whom was only 3 years old, possibly be left entirely alone in an apartment in a foreign country for a period exceeding 3 hours, under the flimsy excuse that they were being checked upon every now and then? The article further stated that Kate's reaction upon discovering the girl's disappearance was quite peculiar, as she immediately rushed off to search for Madeleine, leaving her 2 other young children completely unattended. She displayed no apparent fear or any immediate inclination to ensure their safety or well-being, nor did it even cross her mind to sit down next to them before making the call to Jerry. The journalist pointed out in his article that Kate and Jerry's actions might have been intentional to create a stir in the restaurant, so that everyone would know the child had disappeared, benefiting from the media attention and their agreement to attend all press conferences. He also stated that their emotional composure was quite peculiar for parents who had tragically lost their daughter, who was, after all, considered the very first true joy and happiness in their lives. They had absolutely no idea where she was located or what her current fate might possibly be. It was widely expected that they would be in a state of utter panic and profound fear, not presenting such a calm and collected demeanor in front of the cameras. Now, concerning the individual whom their friends reported seeing carrying the young girl, the journalist then alleged that their entire testimony had been fabricated from the very beginning, and that the underlying reason for all this widespread collusion was their collective involvement in administering sedatives to children and their profound fear of legal punishment. Despite the harshness of the analysis, which initially started as nothing more than a mere newspaper article, its influence didn't remain confined to the newspaper's pages, as the journalist subsequently released a full documentary film entirely based on this very theory. This entirely shifted public opinion concerning Kate and Jerry, who had once enjoyed widespread public sympathy. The journalist then began to earn vast sums of money, capitalizing on the mistakes the family had made. Even the Portuguese police have started to become seriously convinced by this theory and are now actively searching for any evidence that might establish the presence of concrete collusion. In August of 2007, the Portuguese police force once again called upon the assistance of specialized police dogs to conduct a thorough search of the residence. However, on this particular occasion, the situation was entirely different from previous attempts. They deployed two of the most renowned and highly regarded police dogs from around the globe, a female dog named Kayla and a male dog named Eddie. These two exceptional canines had been specifically trained in a pair of truly unique and specialized skills. The first is able to detect the scent of human blood in any location, even if it has been thoroughly cleaned with powerful chemical agents, while the second specializes in the discovery of human cadavers, even if they are buried, or have been burned, or are submerged deep within the water, and he is also specifically trained never to bark unless he senses the distinct odor of a human corpse. Their trainer confirmed that the dogs had never made a single mistake throughout their lives in over 200 cases where they had been utilized. This gave the police a strong sense of hope that these particular dogs would prove to be the crucial key to resolving the entire investigation. The dogs were then brought to the resort facility where they conducted a thorough search of the beach and the surrounding vicinity, in addition to the McCann family's apartment. The findings proved to be far stranger than what the investigators had anticipated, as the specialized search dogs specifically indicated a precise spot behind the sofa situated in the living room, suggesting the presence of either blood or a body at that particular location. As for the dog, the one specifically trained for detecting human remains, it barked when it encountered some of Kate's clothing items kept inside the closet. It also barked near the door of the automobile the family had rented and upon the vehicle's rear storage compartment. Following the thorough examination and analysis of the samples, investigators uncovered DNA traces that showed a significant match to Madeleine McCann's genetic profile. Consequently, on August 8th, the case was officially reclassified from a mere kidnapping inquiry to a full-fledged murder investigation, and Kate and Jerry were then formally placed under investigation. Kate was taken into custody and interrogated as the mother. The investigators put immense pressure on her, pushing her to the point where they offered her a deal. If she would only admit that the little girl had died accidentally, her prison sentence would be reduced to a mere 2 years, allowing Jerry to remain at home to look after their other children. However, after 11 long hours of intense questioning, Kate steadfastly refused to provide any answers during the entire course of the investigation. As a result of this, the couple was subsequently released due to a complete lack of sufficient evidence. Even police dogs, despite their remarkable accuracy in detecting various scents, are not considered strong legal evidence in court proceedings, as investigators have explained that any traces of blood or smells discovered in the apartment could potentially belong to someone who had resided there previously, or to an individual who had rented the vehicle before them. As for the scent detected on Kate's clothing, her attorney clarified that it was entirely natural, particularly given that Kate herself is a medical professional. After Kate and Jerry endured immense pressure and a fierce public and media onslaught in Portugal, the couple decided to gather their belongings and return to Britain before investigators could uncover any concrete evidence proving the exact cause of Madeleine's disappearance. By the month of September in 2007, the couple who were living in Britain were working with all their dedication to make sure their voices were heard by the officials and to regain the public's crucial support once again. Indeed, the British government was a very strong supporter of them both, especially after the entire case had transformed into a kind of rivalry between itself and the Portuguese government. as Britain made significant efforts to prove that its own citizens were not criminals, while Portugal, for its part, actively sought to defend the good reputation of its tourist resorts and to clearly demonstrate their safety, thereby guaranteeing the continued flow of tourism there. Each party firmly maintained their own perspective concerning the issue, fighting to establish its validity. Ultimately, Portuguese police officially decided to close the case in August 2008, declaring Madeleine McCann deceased. The parents were also cleared of any murder charges. What's more, it was decided to pay financial compensation to the family for the defamation of their reputation. Especially after the individual whom some people had seen carrying a child resembling Madeleine went to the police and admitted that he was indeed present at that location at that very time. He explained he was carrying his own daughter, who was merely asleep, and was on his way back to his family's apartment. He also stated that he was a British tourist, just like the McCann family, and had absolutely no involvement whatsoever in what transpired. Despite the official closure of the case file, the McCann family did not give up. They decided to raise donations and appoint investigators of different nationalities, hoping to find any lead that would guide them to the whereabouts of their daughter, who remained missing for many years. They rejected the idea of her death and were determined that she was still alive and living with another family now. So they designed an age progression image of her appearance as she grew older, year after year, hoping someone would recognize her and report her whereabouts. All of this was with the support and coordination of the British government, whose financial contributions to the campaign known as Operation Grange until 2019 exceeded 11 million British pounds. The situation continued to be as it was until June of 2020. After a full 13 years had passed since the young girl's disappearance, the German police finally came forward and unveiled a truly astonishing surprise that absolutely no one had ever expected. They announced their suspicion regarding an arrested individual named Christian Bruckner, a man who is 43 years old, a notorious criminal with an extensive criminal history filled with cases of assault and theft. He was apprehended on charges of raping a 72-year-old woman. During the course of their investigations, detectives uncovered that he was present in Portugal, residing in a house situated very near the McCann family's residence on the specific night the young girl vanished. And when they examined his mobile phone company records, they confirmed his presence near the resort on the night of the child's disappearance. And he even received a call from an unknown private number at the precise moment the little girl vanished. However, the crucial question that remained without an answer was, who truly owned this mysterious number? And does he have any direct connection to Madeleine's disappearance, or not? Pause. Up until now, no one has truly known for sure. The German government harbored strong suspicions about Christian Bruckner's involvement in the disappearance case, and their suspicions were based upon several crucial and significant pieces of evidence. The first of these pieces of evidence was found when they conducted a search of his old factory, where the investigators discovered a secret storage area that was filled with photographs of very young children, the total number of which exceeded 8,000 photographs of children whose ages were between 2 and 5 years old. In addition to the photographs, parts of children's clothing were discovered, and among them was a piece of fabric that resembled the trousers Madeleine had been wearing on the night of her disappearance. Furthermore, another crucial piece of evidence emerged, strongly suggesting his potential involvement to the police. This was specifically what transpired the very next day following the disappearance, when he proceeded to register his vehicle under the name of an entirely different individual, and then quickly left Portugal, a move that immediately raised strong suspicions about his attempt to hide any evidence. Despite all this compelling evidence and the significant pressure exerted upon him by the German government, attempting to compel him to confess to his crimes against children, including his direct involvement in the disappearance of Madeleine, he steadfastly adhered to his lawyer's counsel and declined to discuss anything beyond the specific rape case for which he was currently being held. Consequently, the German police were unable to bring any formal charges against Christian Bruckner in the case concerning the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. They could only sentence him to 7 years in prison for a separate rape charge, pending the discovery of conclusive evidence linking him directly to the crime. After 3 years, a crucial report reached the British government from a former drug dealer who had maintained an old friendship with Christian Bruckner. The man stated that Christian often preferred to spend time in a deserted location near a lake in Portugal, approximately 50 kilometers from the resort where the little girl disappeared. Even though the place was completely deserted, Christian himself would often describe it as his own personal paradise. He would spend many long hours there, swimming in the waters and enjoying his solitude on the sandy beach. It was not at all improbable that this very spot, which he frequented so regularly, served as a hidden location for him to commit some of his other heinous crimes. In May 2023, a massive search operation was launched, coordinated by the Portuguese, German, and British governments, utilizing every advanced method. Highly trained police dogs, specialized divers, advanced digging equipment, and radars to examine every inch of the area, hoping to find any evidence related to Madeleine. However, after several days of intense investigation, absolutely no trace was uncovered. This wasn't the first search conducted in the region, as local residents had reported that investigators carried out a similar operation back in 2018 after they received intelligence from former criminals. They proceeded to conduct a comprehensive sweep of the lake and its surrounding vicinities, as the site was deemed an ideal spot for any perpetrator wishing to eliminate all traces of their crime. Despite their extensive efforts, however, they failed to uncover any conclusive evidence. And on every occasion when bones or remains were discovered, it became quite evident after their analysis that they belonged to animals and not to human beings. Over the many years that have gone by, the government's dedicated attention to resolving Madeleine's case was not limited to just the British and Portuguese governments, but the German government also actively joined the ongoing investigation efforts, striving to definitively prove Christian Bruckner's undeniable involvement. In October of 2023, a video clip widely circulated online of a young Polish woman, 21 years old, claiming to be the missing British child, Madeleine McCann, alleging she had a birthmark in her eye that was strikingly similar to Madeleine's. However, Madeleine's family demanded the girl undergo a DNA test to confirm her claims. When she took the test, the results showed it wasn't her. In 2026, after 19 long years of unresolved mystery, the disappearance case of the young girl Madeleine McCann returned to the forefront once again, following the release of startling official news about leaked emails from Jeffrey Epstein's files and their direct link to Madeleine McCann's disappearance, revealed for the very first time. According to one of the letters, it details the sighting of a woman named Ghislaine Maxwell in September of 2009, which was 2 years following Madeleine's disappearance. The witness stated that he observed her in the company of a young girl who was reportedly a very close match to Madeleine McCann's physical description. When the witness approached her to verify the child's identity, Maxwell sensed danger and quickly placed her hand over Madeleine's eye, which bore a distinctive birthmark. She then got into the car with the child and sped away rapidly. The witness subsequently reported this incident to the authorities, a report among thousands that reached investigators at that time, with the total number of complaints exceeding 8,000. But the authorities informed the witness they would contact him and investigate the matter. However, each time the witness reached out to the authorities, he was met with deliberate evasion, as they seemed determined to quickly conceal the information for reasons that remain unknown. Ghislaine Maxwell, for her part, is presently serving a 20-year prison sentence in the United States after being found guilty in 2021 on charges of sex trafficking of underage girls and conspiracy for her significant role in aiding Jeffrey Epstein to manage a widespread sexual exploitation network. The court also confirmed that Epstein would send Maxwell by private jet to Portugal, specifically to Lisbon and Faro, where she managed a network of individuals working under her in luxury resorts, targeting children for abduction and trafficking them out of the country. Judicial reports also pointed out that these networks would not have been able to operate with such ease without the potential complicity or negligence of some local entities, which may have contributed to concealing traces of certain crimes and withholding sensitive information from the public. And expert Arian, who brought the Epstein files to light, stated, saying,
I have personally reviewed some of Epstein's highly confidential email documents, which American authorities have not yet released to the public. It was revealed that Jean-Luc Brunel, who owns and operates a modeling agency that serves as a front for human trafficking, was reportedly presented with 3 young girls as a birthday gift. Shockingly, among the names explicitly mentioned in these documents was the British child Madeleine McCann. I also continue to demand that the American authorities publish these documents in their entirety for public review, so that Madeleine's family can finally find some measure of peace, and likewise the families of all the other victims, enabling everyone to fully grasp the complete truth of the matter.
In the end, the story of Madeleine McCann remains a painful reminder that the disappearance of one child can reveal a whole world of secrets and shadows. And the lesson here is that the truth may be delayed, but it rarely disappears forever. Every mystery, no matter how much time may pass, always leaves behind a thread that ultimately guides us to the truth. And you, dear viewer, Share your opinion with us in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to our channel to receive all the latest updates.